on the transmitter cost. That's not really sure.
This counter's nice and cool. The counter's nice and cool.
We good? We're good now.
Okay. I am calling this meeting to order. This is Open Space and Ecology, Wednesday, May 14th, 2014. Is everybody's present for the record? And are there any, would anybody like to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
Excuse me, hold on.
Yeah.
I wanted to suggest one additional item. This is a request to staff, so I'm not sure that we can include it. More work for staff. Is it okay to include that, Stuart?
What you could, is it something that has come up since the agenda was posted, and that you need to take action on prior to the next meeting?
No.
Okay, so here's my suggestion then. So instead of having the committee talk about it,
Okay.
you can say that you would like to include something on the next agenda.
All right.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, maybe even on the July agenda, because I won't be here at the next meeting, and that will give you guys some time to
Okay.
look up what I would like to look up. So do we need to add an agenda item?
No.
Or where?
Nope.
So where do I say that?
How about, you could do that now. We'll call it oral communications for items not on the agenda.
But
Okay.
I haven't.
Oh, never mind. How about if we wait till we get to item number 2?
Okay. You tell me when.
So, I recommend, I would like us to move number 15, Monterey pine removal quotes and species replacement list up underneath the invasive species brochure, and also the update on the Quarry Road cleanup. Sorry, I didn't have my thing on. I'm going to say that over again. I didn't have the microphone on. I'm sorry. I'd like to move item number 15, Monterey pine removal quotes and species replacement list, in particular species replacement list, up to right below Joe Cannon's presentation, because I would love his opinion on the species replacement list and the species, if possible. Since we have him here, we might as well take advantage of him. and maybe also move up the Quarry Road cleanup, so that maybe Joe could speak a little bit about what the base of Owl Canyon might benefit from the Quarry Road cleanup, if you have a few words on that. Is that a possibility to change the agenda?
I move to support that amendment.
Any second?
I second it.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Motion to adopt the agenda as
I move to adopt
altered.
the amended.
Second.
Adopt the, okay, very good.
Okay.
So,
Oral communication.
oral communications. Glenn, would
When?
you like, sorry?
You told me to tell her when.
Okay.
I screamed out when, sorry.
Thank you,
Would
Stuart.
you like to
Make
tell us
sure
what
your
you're thinking,
microphone's
Glenn?
on.
Barbara, so my-
I think it's on.
Yeah.
Is it on?
Mine is on, yes.
So I was talking to Mary Gutekanst, our missing committee member, and we were talking about the Levinson property. And I said to her, what's the ecological value of that property? That is, what are the resources on it? Was there ever a study done? And she said that she thought there had been some sort of biological inventory or study done a long time ago. And so what I was going to ask is whether perhaps staff could track it down. Because, you know, we've talked about trying to preserve that property for some use other than, you know, condos or whatever might go there. So it'd be nice to know what's on it, biologically speaking. And that seems like a good starting point. So that was all I was going to ask.
Can I also mention that it's not just what is on it biologically, in terms of quote unquote habitat value, but its strategic location for access to the mountain and its adjacency to Clippy Hill and the flyway for the butterflies.
Mary's opinion was that whatever survey was done was not terribly thorough, but it would be nice to see what we have, and then maybe start from there if we want to try to get additional studies done or something.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that the expression low habitat value should never cross our lips ever again when it comes to San Bruno Mountain.
No, well, that's why I would like us
portion of it, yeah.
to try to find out what there is, if anything. She was pretty sure, and her memory is pretty good. So it's going to take some rooting around in old records. I think probably 10 years ago, something like that. Old.
And can we get, at the same time, can we get an update on our status as a priority conservation area?
Sure.
Okay, does anybody else have anything that is not currently on the agenda they would like to address? If nobody else has something, I do have something. This is a question for staff. I think I can ask it. I had said I wanted this committee to do something for Bike to Work Day, and of course we blew right past that. We also blew past the science fair at Littman, which is something else we're involved in. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how things get calendared, and if Lisa maybe left a master calendar somewhere, if the things that come up on an annual basis, or did we just lose all of that?
I haven't seen anything like it. I could look for it.
Okay.
In the case that there isn't one, I think we should work on, you and I can email each other and work and build one.
I'm not the person to do it because my history on the committee doesn't go back far enough, I feel, to really have like an ingrained knowledge of what things happen at what sessions, you know? But I don't want to see us as a committee to continue to blow away things that we would normally be preparing for. So I'm not sure what the best way to address that issue is, but I do want to stop missing things.
And we could bring back a calendar at the next meeting.
Okay.
And there are some things we know already. For instance, we should agendize community festival for probably even the next meeting and maybe the meeting after that. And then you brought up the science fair, so we should probably agendize that in, I don't know what, September?
There's usually a habitat restoration day or two that we know they're about when in the year.
Yeah.
Right, so as opposed to talking about it now, since it's not on the agenda, we'll put it on the agenda so we can have this.
So that should be on the agenda for next time.
Yep.
And then I think we just need some sort of master spreadsheet or something so that we don't get to these events and then suddenly realize we needed to talk about it at the preceding meeting in order to do something,
Yeah, I think we all got sidetracked with the draft EIR, and I'm sure we'll get sidetracked again. But if we have a master calendar, we won't run into as many challenges. I had a lot of people who said, oh, I would have helped with the canyon cleanup, but it was the spring thing day.
Yeah.
It's been like that for years,
I know it has been.
and people have come and they've done both.
I know that, Stuart, but that's what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
So we should kind of plan out a year-long rolling calendar of events.
Yeah. I think that would be smarter. It would serve us better in the long run.
Yeah.
And do we want to talk about the sale of the land maybe next meeting, Michelle?
No, it's a done deal, and I don't think we should discuss it here. I am extremely upset over it, and I think I would just run out of the room screaming.
Okay. Fair enough.
I think that we should make it a point to be very, very aware and also possibly, have a discussion with our council subcommittee about future land use and land acquisition. And what's the opposite of acquisition, Stuart?
Purchase? Oh, opposite south.
Disposal?
Deacquisition?
Disposal of public
Deaccession.
land. Yeah,
If you're in a museum, it's deaccession.
yeah. Well,
Don't know.
anyway, so maybe that should be an item, a topic of discussion, without discussing that particular issue.
So, would you want to schedule maybe for August or July having a meeting with the committee to go over the work plan for the upcoming year,
Yes.
and then that could be an opportunity to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So and I know Glenn is not here in June, is what she told us. So do you want to see if we can do I think we do an annual meeting with them anyway, and July might be a good time to set up the work plan for the year if you would like to.
Yes, as long as the subcommittee members are available
Yeah,
and not on vacation.
we'll check.
Okay.
Becoming a very busy July meeting.
All right, so are we ready to move on to item 3?
Yes.
Our special guest here, Joe Cannon. Welcome to Open Space and Ecology.
I wasn't told I was just going to answer questions. I wasn't told I was going to do a presentation, so I actually asked that question.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, I can tell you what, I mean, I don't know where you guys are at with this particular plan, so I can answer questions about it, I can make suggestions, so maybe it can be an interplay between where you're at, and we'll kind of ask questions about that.
Well, can I say a couple words about where we were at, or do you want to, Glenn?
I can.
Okay.
I mean, I got it put on the agenda. So just thinking about all the volunteer hours that have been invested around here and looking around town at how many people still plant invasive species, and having visited Florida where they have a really aggressive statewide invasive species ordinance saying that if you have certain species, I don't think it's every invasive species, but if you have some of them on your property, you have to remove them.
Mm-hmm.
So it just occurred to me to think, well, what about an ordinance? And obviously, a statewide or countywide would be better than a local one.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just in the very early stages, so
Yeah.
we thought you probably knew a whole lot more about invasive species ordinances than we did. So
Well, I mean, one thing I would say is true, particularly at this level, is anytime you talk about, there's people who are going to hear this and be immediately supportive, and there's people who are going to hear about this and sort of think about it, and there's people who are going to be not so excited by being told what to do with their gardens. I think you really need to sort of be aware of that sort of, the people you're trying to reach. And so I've always learned that sort of a positive education as sort of the first step is probably important, because again, if you just sort of say you have to pull this off your land, you might get more pushback than if. So even a pamphlet, it should really talk about what's special about Brisbane and San Bruno Mountain, and the fact that there's the fact that you live here, you have plenty of benefits from this beautiful mountain, and with that comes this extra responsibility. So just sort of talk about what could be lost, and then talk about the possible ways in which that's lost, and then really go into this is the list of plants. And so in the plants, I can go through what plants I chose and why. You want to go to that? So, I mean, there's plenty of invasive plants on San Bruno Mountain and in the Bay Area, but I try to choose ones that I know are highly horticultural, meaning people are still planting them in their yards, and that are highly invasive. So I want to put those two together. There are already a number of species that are unfortunately ubiquitous across San Bruno Mountain, and I didn't necessarily include all of those, but ones that have not really, invaded heavily in this area. So I chose those in particular, and there's a couple that I've seen just a few of in Brisbane that are highly invasive, other places that I've seen them take off, like on Mount Tamalpais. And so a lot of people don't realize these things, they look very cute until they're not so cute, and they're everywhere. And that's really the challenge, is knowing which ones are going to create the long-term problems. So part of it is, I think, first of all, getting people to really recognize that they, particularly in the last couple of houses closest to the mountain, they really hold a key to new invasions, particularly from this part of town. And Brisbane is nested into the mountains. There's a lot of surface area between Brisbane and the mountains. So I think just really getting people invested in the idea that they're sort of responsible for future invasions, and then giving them the list. And part of that is also just so people know what it is that they shouldn't buy or plant in their gardens.
So are you suggesting that we maybe not start with an ordinance, but with a more with a campaign, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking a campaign covers the people who would love to do the right thing and informs the people who are just sort of sitting there, and keeps the people who might be a little fussy from getting fussy. And then the ordinance comes after the campaign, so they know what the ordinance is about and why it's happening. I mean, I don't know. It just, given the fact that this isn't a county-wide thing, meaning really starting here in Brisbane, it's a good way. It also makes you do the public education up front versus kind of getting the pushback and then doing the public education.
Yeah. Okay.
And so do you want to go over this list with us?
I mean, sure. If you want to go down it. I mean, should I just list it, or do you want to ask questions specifically about any of these species?
We should just sort of, I think, maybe tell us why each species is on the list and what the threat is.
Okay.
And that would be really helpful because we will have a public record of what you say.
Mm-hmm.
We can go back and check it, and it will help us craft our campaign.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm assuming the list in front of me is the same as yours.
Is this the one that says invasives?
Well, I have
by
a
Joe
I have a pictorial
I have the
experience.
picture version.
Yeah.
Because
So-
you guys are online.
so
We
do
have
we
the
have-
black and
we're
white
starting with
ugly
pampas
list. Thanks,
grass?
Natalie.
Pampas grass? Is
Yeah,
that
I
one of
hate
yours?
it.
I was saving paper.
Yeah, so pampas grass is just one of those that has seeds that blow far afield. So it's one of those that even a few violators are going to quickly send their seeds onto the mountain. So that's a low-hanging fruit in terms of it's highly invasive into the mountain. The oxeye daisy is one that is starting to show up on the mountain, and people are seemingly actually, I've seen before, moving it along trails, and it's showing up in new places. I think people are purposely moving it around. And so...
Do you mean like on their clothes or?
I mean like grabbing seed heads and flinging it about.
Really?
Well, you'll see it suddenly like show up all along the Ridge Trail now, and it wasn't there 2 years ago. So someone's moving it around because it suddenly has a population out of nowhere. So just as an example, and this thing has happened when I worked for the National Park Service. Certain people love certain plants and they like to move them around. So this one in particular, for some reason, seems to be one of those plants people like moving around, and they like having it in their garden. It's does really well in gardens. Looks very large and beautiful very quickly, and is highly invasive. And there's a couple of spots on the mountain where it kind of looks like snow sometimes, and they're currently trying to control it, but it's an ongoing. It's like a 5 to 6 year work to get rid of a population. So it's just in terms of things I know that are in people's gardens currently and that have a high invasive possibility. The next one is licorice plant. That one I put in there because that's one of those that is not yet on the mountain, but this is the one on the west slope of Mount Tamalpais that basically covered probably a third to a little more than a third of the entire western slope of Mount Tamalpais above Stetson Beach. And the National Park Service and the state parks got together and got rid of it, but it was highly invasive. And it's unfortunately in a lot of Mediterranean sort of garden sections of gardens and in people's lists. And so I have seen a couple people in Brisbane with this in their yards. And so it hasn't moved onto the mountain yet. So it's just another one of those. So I would definitely wanted to get the future weeds, not the ones that are already sort of on their way onto the mountain, but the ones that have yet to get there. And again, this is where I want to emphasize that the weeds themselves are really important, but also the public's attention and appreciation for the whole process is equal to knowing the individual species.
Can you give some idea what the licorice plant looks like? You're not talking about fennel, obviously.
You can see a picture. You don't have a picture in front of you. It's kind of a gray-green bush that gets about this big. It can grow through scrub and get about this big on the mountain or other places. It's, again, a very sort of classical sort of Mediterranean garden that you see in other places. And it's one of those that it's one of those things that's starting to move into open spaces. And so that's one that I did see in Brisbane higher up, and I just noticed it and wanted to make sure it got on that list.
is that used? Is that used in making licorice? Is that why it's called that, or is?
No, I don't think so.
I didn't. Yeah, I don't think it's a true licorice.
Yeah.
I don't know where it gets its name, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So Cape Ivy is on the mountain, but it's only in certain locations. And
Is that what this German ivy is?
yeah, that's what I
Okay,
mean.
that's Cape Ivy.
It's actually called Cape Ivy now because it's from South Africa, and it's one of those plants that creeps and takes over. And so in the Park Service, they've literally cut containment lines around it, and they maintain it because it's just basically it's kind of like the West Coast kudzu. If it gets into wet areas, it basically completely takes over the entire canopy. So it's one of those that is around. And again, the goal is just to keep it from getting to more places on the mountain. Currently, it's in the bog, but it's on the other side of Guadalupe Canyon Road. And so as long as it stays on that side of the Guadalupe Canyon Road, it's fine. I mean, it's not fine that it's there, but at least it's not going to take over the whole mountain. So that's one of those that could be actively planted. The challenge with Cape Ivy is a little sprig of it, inside a lawnmower or inside of when they cut along the side. That's how it's often moved, is it gets picked up in machinery and then a little piece falls out someplace else. And a little piece, one node is all that's necessary to start a new population. So that's been the problem in the Park Service, is they have had to do all sorts of controls on how they do mowing and lawn maintenance and making sure they don't move that around, or even if you destroy it, you basically have to bury it or put it in bags or under tarps. Otherwise, it'll creep out of your pile quickly. So, again, these are just particularly pernicious.
I have
weeds.
seen that around gardens here in
Yes.
Brisbane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that different than the English ivy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a lot more succulent, but in some ways more invasive because it kind of crawls under things and then suddenly in a wet year explodes and you suddenly didn't know you had it over an entire hillside. I've watched it in Pacifica start off as a little green spot, bigger green spot, and now entire hillsides are completely one species. So it's kind of one of those that looks cute to start with and not so in a while. So pincushion flower, pincushion plant, scabiosa. This is one, again, I think that some folks have spread around because they think it's pretty. And we're really working hard on getting it out. And so literally the last 6 months we've been really focused on it. It's also been clearly spread to places that doesn't make any sense. It looks like people literally have moved it to a new place, but we are actively trying to hit all the little patches, and there's a lot around Brisbane. So as you get closer to Brisbane and the roads that lead into Brisbane, you see more and more of it. So it's definitely coming from Brisbane, and our hope is at some point we will control it, but we don't want to have to keep controlling it for the next 50 years.
Yeah, one of the problems was one of the major trails going onto the mountain as we were kids, up on the top of Trinity, went right through a big patch of scabiosa that Mrs. Evelman had planted in her garden, and we spread it all over the mountain because we would pick it and take it with us. And it sticks to your clothes. And it sticks to your clothes, and it sticks to your animals. And so you can see that, it's kind of interesting looking at it, 50 years later, and you can see where we hiked, and you can see this, trail of scabiosa spread from where we would hike through it and then go on up and over the mountain and down to Buckeye Canyon and onto the Shell Mound and then on to the next canyon, and you can see our little pathways marked in scabiosa.
So it's my understanding that not all cultivars of the scabiosa are considered invasive, or is that not the case?
Do not know. I just know
Okay.
the one we have all over the mountain.
Okay.
And what's also true is a lot of times species will go through changes. So there has been species that have been naturalized that were really well behaved, and then suddenly they go through some genetic shifts in their local population. They get a little more adapted, whether to local pollinators or something, and they can suddenly move out. So that's happened before. There's a number of cases where things that were not as invasive become more invasive. So I don't know. The goal here, again, that's why I'm saying focusing on there's a long list of these species, even just here, is really focusing on the idea of invasiveness. And one of the key things I think in the conversation, if I may, is a lot of people sort of mix it up with native and non-native, and that the non-native concept really freaks people out. And I would say those terms are really a core of the problem. The problem really here is invasive and non-invasive, because there are, I think, something like 1,200 plants that have naturalized in California, but only about 72 have become highly invasive. Okay, and so that what that means is there's certain biology of particular species that, in most of these cases, they have toxins in them that local insects and herbivores don't eat. So that frees them from any kind of control. So it's important to be really clear, this isn't sort of any plant not from California. This is a specific set of plants that go into monoculture. And so the real concern here is most of these species don't just enter into native habitats, they basically wipe out all the diversity in those native habitats. And I think it's really key to make a distinction between invasive and just non-local.
I agree.
Yes. But I was just asking because I noticed that Lowe's still sells scabiosa, but I don't think it's the same variety of or the same.
Yeah, I mean,
one
Lowe's
that we
sells
have
French
here.
broom as well, so
Yeah, I know.
I don't think they're too worried about that.
Yeah, and even
We've written to them
yeah,
in the past several times. We could try again.
and even Annie Zaniels carried an absolutely gorgeous scabiosa called Fama Blue, which I had for a while, but it reverted. I mean, it reverts. They had a hard time keeping this Fama Blue stock because it can revert. So
Okay.
So French broom is pretty self-evident, hopefully to everyone here. So same with Scotch broom.
you'd think it would be, but Lowe's sells it.
Yes, I know.
They do?
Yes. I wrote and complained about that.
The committee's written and complained too. I thought they'd given up at least on that one.
I don't know about this.
Ordinance.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Fountain grass, not currently terribly invasive in Northern California, but again, as things are getting drier, it's very invasive in Southern California and now in Central California, all over Hawaii. So it's one of those things where I think if we let it spread too much, it will eventually become a problem. Cotoneaster, it's one of those that is on the mountain and is in the neighborhoods because it's a sort of a weed that shows in people's yard and they just sort of adopt it.
Goes into a tree and everybody
So the goal here is not, and this goes back to ordinance. I wouldn't necessarily start with education, and the ordinance might be really about ones that we're trying to stop getting from Brisbane into the mountains. So I maybe not one put like Cotoneaster, because I think a lot of people have it on their property and it's just there not because they planted it, but because it showed up.
And that one is carried away by birds?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Eupatorium, that one is in Brisbane and is currently not on the mountain, and it has invaded the headlands and Big Sur and many places in the state. So that's one of those future problems that I don't want to be a problem. It's a medium-sized shrub with white flowers that likes to be an understory and up canyons. And so I've seen it in Brisbane, and it gets pretty weedy. So I think another thing is I don't think people actually, maybe someone planted it 20 years ago, and it's just kind of floating in the neighborhoods right now in people's yards. So I don't think they're purposely planting it, but I do think it's in and around. Not unlike English ivy that kind of just moves around neighborhoods and stays there from old plantings. So in these cases, the goal is really just to be aware of, and part of it is what we did at the National Park Service is we actually went to the first set of neighbors, like the people who lived the first couple houses because those are really the wall, right? The wall of folks whose if they plant these plants, the likelihood they show up in the open space is really high, right? It's less of a challenge for folks who are sort of in the middle of town. Now, if they have pampas grass, it's a different story because pampas grass will find its way out. But for a lot of these species, not that we want to not discourage people from planting them, but the real folks who need to sort of have a direct education, who really are the wall between the mountain and the town, is that last couple of houses. And I think directing that more at them and giving them the pamphlets and talking to them individually, getting them on board can make a very large difference in keeping invasions from getting from town onto San Bruno Mountain. Boulardia? What?
Well, on the English ivy, there's different kinds, it seems.
Well, there's Algerian ivy and English ivy, and They both pretty much invade in the same locations and do the same kind of damage in ecosystems. So it's really subtle in difference. And so I've literally had people point them out in front of me and couldn't really tell you the difference. So Algerian ivy is the leaves aren't quite as distinctive, and they're a little larger. But again, you can take English ivy and put it in the sun. It's going to look very similar to Algerian ivy, or put Algerian ivy in the shade, and it's going to look very similar. At some level, what matters is they're both highly invasive.
Okay.
Oh, both kinds are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so in getting rid of that, I mean, a lot of people, it's pernicious and hard to get rid of.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do use it for screening a type of thing.
Yeah.
And, kind of like privacy thing. And then it gets out of control and runs up the canyons and onto the mountain.
Yeah.
But do you have, or can you help us put together a list of other plants that would serve the same function and not run away?
Yes. So,
Because
the California Exotic Pest Plant Council has a whole long list of common weeds and has a replacement. I actually have a book here.
Is that IPC, Joe?
What was that?
Is that the IPC?
Yeah.
Invasive.
So this book is one of the Watershed Project nonprofit I used to work for. They came out with this, working with them, and it basically talks about both the weeds, how to pull them out, how to identify them, but also what you can plant instead of them. That's kind of in the same sort of visual size range. I didn't. It's been a while since I looked at it, but I don't know if they have a version of it. But there's plenty of vines that don't invade. So I'm sure in a pamphlet it could do the same thing, like plant this, but don't plant this. Or if you need a vine. The also thing with both those ivies, if you let them climb up into a tree, they actually flower and produce fruit. If it turns out if you keep them from climbing up high, they don't do that. You can even see that on the mountain when they're just sort of in the understory, just kind of crawling along. They don't produce any flowers or seed, but as soon as they climb up a tree, flower like crazy, produce their seeds. So part of it might even just be saying keep it off of your trees, which is not probably something people even want to have happen. But they basically when it
goes
climbs,
so fast when it goes on the tree.
I know. So ultimately the goal is to get folks and particularly those last couple of folks right next to the mountain to consider replacing it and giving them some replacement choices.
Yeah, we want to be careful because, like, one of the replacements that we thought at one point, a friend of mine planted that she thought would be a great, vine was Passiflora jamesonii, passion vine. One little 1 gallon pot has taken over, a whole lot. It's really invasive. Really invasive. Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew that would be so prolific here?
Yeah.
It's like the California kudzu or something. Okay. Billardia.
Billardia is sometimes called Chinese houses, and it's no longer larger than this. There's a couple small populations on the mountain, but again, it's often in people's gardens. And it's just like it's not quite as invasive as scabiosa, but it does, once it gets into the seed bank, it can hold on to a site. So it's a weird little white and pink thing you've seen. You may have seen it on the mountain once or twice. And it's become a problem throughout the national parks in the Mission Blue habitat. So it's one of those things where we don't have a problem with it quite yet, but it's having seen it elsewhere, I want to make sure it doesn't become a problem here.
Do we have a native plant that's also called Chinese
We have
houses?
actually 2 natives, but they're annuals, so they're really sort of fleshy and only live for about 6 months. So this one is a lot, it's more almost like a little woody version of that, but much different looking, yes.
Okay. Will be a problem.
Hawthorn, there's a couple of small populations on the mountain, but it grows rhizominously and is really hard to get rid of. And I have seen it in people's gardens, so it's again one of those that we should discourage further planting. And again, particularly ones close to the mountain. It generally likes wetter areas, so the ridge, I'm sure birds can take the seeds over the ridge and down to the next wet valley, but that's the places that exist currently is kind of wet lower valleys over by the bog. So it's just one of those that we want to discourage future planting.
Is that different than a hawthorn tree?
It's probably the same thing as a hawthorn tree. Yeah, similar leaves. So again, I've been hacking at it for so long. I don't know if it could be a tree because it's now just this large, this bush. And then the last one is capeweed. So capeweed is again one of those that grows really well in our Mediterranean climate, and just it turns into carpet. Now, fortunately, the one that's here does not produce seeds as of yet. But it grows incredibly well from little pieces. So if you again a little piece shows up somewhere, soon you'll have City College where I teach. The front lawn is 50% capeweed, and it just sort of every year it takes over another foot. So it's one of those things where it once it's grows sort of as a ground cover, and it's really hard to get out of the ground. Just puts all these little side roots, and sort of takes over. So again, one of those things where it looks fine to start with, but the GGRA had to do a lot of battling throughout the headlands where it got established after the Army planted it in various places.
I would like to share one with you.
Mm-hmm.
2-3 years ago, somebody planted salsify on San Bruno and Santa Clara, and since then I have watched it move throughout Brisbane.
Salsify, I don't know what that one.
It's actually the roots are edible. They've got really good roots, but it goes anywhere from about 18 inches to 2 feet tall, and it's got a purple flower and grass-like leaves. And when the seed heads come out, they look like dandelion
Yes.
heads,
Oh,
but
got
they're
it.
about this big.
Yes, that
I
is
have
impressive. Yes.
Yeah. So, and I have seen it move from Santa Clara down San Bruno. It's now on Monterey. I've seen it in the lot over by the Eagles. There's some of it in the lot in the Eagles too. So it's moving fast.
Okay.
Can you get a picture of it?
So we can
Yeah,
put it
I
on
brought
a
it
wanted
last
poster?
time, but a couple times ago. But yeah.
Yeah, it
I'll-
just showed up in my yard a couple years ago, all by
Yeah.
itself as a volunteer, and this year
It's
think
quite
there were
pretty,
a
but
dozen. Yeah, it's just lots of it. It really goes
it's
fast.
moving fast.
But would just even that example is a great example of maybe, although pamphlets are great to hand to people, maybe having something that's a website where we can add more information, put updates, get people involved, so it's not necessarily like this dead thing of oh, here's a piece of paper. It's you're about to do your gardening. Here's a great list of things you should plant. Here's a great list of you shouldn't plant. Make sure gardeners get it. Make it more of something that's going to be more accessed.
Mm-hmm.
So having a web page or website somewhere in the city.
Is this book available?
It is.
Okay.
It was a few years ago. It's probably online by now. It's probably been updated a few times.
Doesn't San Bruno Mountain Watch have a plant this instead thing? Instead of pyracantha, plant toyon?
Don't plant a pest. But
Yeah.
We have the Don't Plant a Pest, and that that came from the county, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then we have our brochure that we're working on.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, which you're working on too, right? With us, this is the collaboration with Mountain Watch and the Open Space and Ecology Committee to do the update of the invasive the invasive plant brochure.
Yeah, the one we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's two things going on here. One, we're looking at invasive species ordinance,
Okay.
and then this was this was
The brochure.
are these plants in that brochure?
no. What's in this brochure right now is French broom, Cape and German ivy, English ivy, and Algerian ivy, Bermuda buttercup, fennel, black mustard, field mustard, and wild radish, and scabiosa.
So those, a good example where I didn't put mustard or oxalis is that is ubiquitous and people aren't actually planting that.
Right.
So I think making them feel responsible for all their oxalis might not,
Might make them insane, like it did me for a while.
So I wonder if we should rechange the brochure. Is it too late?
No, it's not too late. I mean, that's part of what we're discussing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should, because if we have a chance to stop new ones in their tracks, then we should do that.
Yeah. I mean, nobody really goes out and plants fennel in their yard either.
No.
I think some
anymore.
people do because it's a food plant. But
It is a food plant.
there's so much of it around it. It's almost.
We can go foraging for it if we want to make some raviolis.
It actually,
Yeah, it's so ubiquitous.
yeah.
I mean, it's almost beyond hope. But if we could stop some new ones, that would be cool.
yeah. So you think we should revisit this a little bit?
Yeah, I think.
We only had room for so many plants on here.
Yeah, and I think again having a website that they can go to, because I think a lot more people communicate through websites these days than they do other media.
Yeah.
We should talk about that.
Yeah.
A website.
And post it on the city's website.
Yeah.
You know.
And figure out how to talk to people that live on the edges. Maybe door to door even.
Yeah. If you note something in someone's yard, if you could jot down their address and what it
I'll
is,
do that.
we can start a little individual sweet letter campaign saying, by the way, we noticed you have this growing in your yard and it's highly invasive. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And if you stop by the Mission Blue Nursery, we'll give you this plant to replace it
That's
with.
a good idea.
And maybe we can fund some of that plant exchange stuff. So, speaking of which, the Mission Blue Nursery, the native plant nursery that is has a plant sale this Saturday from 9 to 2. So definitely be there. Joe's going to be giving a talk on seeds and seed germination, and Beth Grossman's law of seeds is going to be displayed there. So it's really going to be a great event.
Can I come there and ask you how to get my damn birdcage primrose to germinate?
I know native seeds. I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry.
I can give you the
It's
email.
California native, not San Brunum
I can
mountain, but
give you the email of somebody who can probably help you.
oh god.
Yeah.
So you may not know the answer to this, but I'm just curious. Since you're in the plant business, do you know if there have been efforts to pass any laws at the state?
Yes, and they have always been blocked by the nursery folks.
Why?
Really?
Because if you can introduce a new fun, there's all like everywhere. There's these sort of in the pet trade and other trade. There's people who are really into the new thing, whatever it is. And apparently, what happens is if you can get a new sort of cool thing from South Africa and your nursery grows it, you suddenly make a lot of money because you have one of the few sources of a new plant. And so they also don't like being told what to do. So basically, the Native Plant Society and others have gone to Sacramento many times, trying to get this to slow them down. And it's mostly after the fact, right? After the fact. And again, you can see with French broom and pampas, they still plant them. So even after the fact isn't really working because the nursery, they have a lot more money. Native Plant Society does not have money to do that. So it's really about lobbying. And as soon as those come up, they get quickly pushed down.
It is a huge industry.
Yeah, I know.
Particularly
I'm
in the
not
state, because
surprised.
we actually, a lot of Southern California nurseries ship to the whole United States. So that's the other problem, is they're not just big in the state, they're big in the country here, unfortunately.
So has the Native Plant Society pretty much given up on trying to get something passed?
You would have to talk to Jake, because Jake has been going years and years and years, trying to talk to different legislators and having done different attempts. So he would know all the details about where that's at and what they have and haven't accomplished and what the challenges are. But I mostly have heard it from him, who's done that kind of work.
Yeah, they'll pass legislation if it's threatening California agriculture, but if it's just threatening the rest of California, they kind of.
Similarly, do you know anything about counties? Have any counties tried to do it? Because Brisbane is awfully small.
Glenn, could you speak into your mic?
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering, do you know anything about whether counties have tried to pass ordinances like this? Brisbane is really small.
I do not. I have not heard that. Again, Jake would probably, the Native Plant Society would probably have a good idea. I have no idea.
Because, Lowe's, we've talked to them, Michelle's talked to them, we've written letters, and they just keep doing it. And the only thing that's going to stop them is a law.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, that's depressing.
I think at some point people will wake up.
Yeah, it's hard because gardening is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it is. Don't ever kid yourself. It's a competitive sport. It really is. I've seen people fight, clawing each other to get to that last plant at the garden show that's some special new thing that people have available.
One last question. When a nursery imports a cool plant from South Africa,
Mhm.
I assume there's no testing of that plant for invasive characteristics. They just, if it lives and they can propagate it, they just do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in theory they're supposed to go through a process, but
Oh, are they?
I think USDA, you're not supposed to, but there's no regular. I mean, there's no one's doing follow-up work. There's no people going around looking for plants that weren't on some previous list, so they're not supposed to do it. But again, like so many things, that aren't sort of well regulated, just because they're not supposed to do it. So the pet trade does the same thing. There's some new cool lizard, suddenly it's in all the pet stores.
Right.
And with the plants, it is illegal to bring in seeds or plant material into the United States. And you can't have it shipped from other countries either.
So how do they get it in then?
Smuggle it.
Yeah.
Not hard to smuggle it at all.
Nurseries, that's how they get plants in?
A lot of
You only need a couple.
you only need a few to start. And so they'll bring in something, some seeds, some whatever. They'll go on a collecting trip and they'll bring stuff back and propagate it. And then it becomes, available.
Can we move on to the invasive species brochure if everybody's had their questions?
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Should I sit down?
Did you get a chance to look?
I have not.
yeah, you look at that and
My glasses.
On the brochure, then we should probably revisit what plants we should have in there. And if in looking at the amount of space we have in the brochure, how would you prioritize the plants that you have on this list? I know it's a terrible question, but it is the reality.
Let's get the good advice while we have it.
I don't know. I mean, a part of it would be the new invaders. Really, something to catch. I mean, because there's certain things already out there. So something that next time they're shopping, that might say, "Oh, I saw that before." I mean, I think that's really where this kind of effort is really going to keep us from is the whole slew of new species in 50 years we don't have to see on the mountain. The other thing is, I think even just the whole idea of invasiveness. I think you really. I teach students all the time, and just really they need to sort of get that. And so diving into the details too quickly, they'll just see a list of plants. And so what you need to do is maybe show a picture of an intact, diverse native grassland and then a monoculture of French broom. Even if it's just under your title, like, help prevent invasions. So they really visually get what it is you're even doing here, about trying to stop it, and then go into the details. But I think if you just sort of start throwing details at them, most people shut off. Yeah.
Speak into the mic. Sorry.
When it comes to our brochure that we're putting out, it seems to me the logical approach would be to address the plants that are for sale.
Yeah.
Because what we're really talking about is people buying stuff and bringing it back in more so than, a stray thing shows up in your backyard.
Yes, I agree.
So which of these on this list are, and then compare and cross-reference that with the list that you just gave us?
Yeah, so Bermuda buttercup is not, fennel is not, black mustard is not, Cape ivy, not sure if it's for sale. I think English ivy is for sale.
Oh yeah.
I be honest, I don't go to regular nurseries. So that
Pampas grass is for sale.
yeah,
And the what was that other grass that you said has become
fountain grass.
Fountain grass, yeah.
Yeah, fountain grasses and scabiosa.
And scabiosa and fountain grass.
Yeah, I would put fountain grass low on the list, given the fact you only have six available to you. I'd go for sort of the top 6 that they're most likely to look at and find and buy.
That's like
So
the
what-
oxeye daisy.
What are the top
I would, pampas grass is definitely there, oxeye daisy, licorice plant I would put on there, pincushion, French broom, and then I would put English ivy.
In English ivy. Okay.
And even though most people know French broom, I think that helps key them in because I think a lot of people know about French broom as a weed, but
But then they see this pretty yellow flowering thing, and it looks so soft and nice. If you wanted to take that and mark it up, or if you had suggestions of what we should write in that introductory paragraph, we would be very open to that because this is a collaborative piece between Mountain Watch and OSEC. And what we have there was sort of based more on what we had done in the past.
Yeah.
Which when we did the original one, those were the, grossest offenders. And
Yeah.
now we have, as you said, the new invasion.
Mhm.
And, and something about maybe the nursery trade or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to, throw a few words on a piece of paper, we could take that and run with it.
Okay.
No, you're really
My
busy.
school year is almost over. Is there any
Yeah.
way we can put this off for a couple of weeks so we don't
Yeah.
have lots of time?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
We've been working on it for a while, and we just don't want to keep putting it off till it's not
Yeah.
done.
Is there any way that we could make this, well, I don't know if it would really make sense, but I'm just thinking, is there any way we could make this longer and include more plants? Or
A
is
website.
that too expensive? Or website?
Yeah, but we can use this as the introduction to inspire them to go to the website, and we can list our worst offenders and make the case and explain why
Okay.
it's so important for us in the interface zone that it's our responsibility to protect the mountain and why it's so important.
So that's good. So maybe we should just sort of recast this whole thing and try to bring out a lot more about invasiveness, as you were saying, and get people to look at the website. So this would be more kind of an introduction than.
Yeah, because I think if you put a lot of detail on here, you're
You'll lose
hoping you're going to hit them and the one that, but are they going to remember this when they're shopping? So I think if you give them the idea, you put a list, you get them more engaged in the idea, and so like here's this website where you can go find it. I think that would be the beginning of it, and then part of it is just like you said, seeing who has some of these species in their yards and maybe. And starting to, drop a note and say, start that conversation.
Yeah.
Can I
Yep.
ask a question real quick? I've heard the mention of website repeatedly. Is there any way that we could have like a tab under the city's website set up so then it would click straight in? And then if it was mobile ready, then people while they're shopping, they'd be able to just click right on and,
Yeah.
don't want to buy that one. Because everybody carries their cell phone. I'm not sure if the
We can
city's
check.
website's mobile ready though.
That'd be awesome, and maybe we could host it too.
It
Because
seems like it's a city, as a city, and the city's our front, that we're saying, hey, this is important.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, they have a lot of apps like the Monterey Bay Aquarium has the Safe Seafood app
was just
where you
thinking
can, look at any seafood. It would be great if there was an invasive species app that worked for, all of, North America, and then it would know where you are based on where your phone is, and it could give you the plants that are bad for your area.
that would be brilliant.
Oh, yeah, it might already
There's an
exist,
app
too.
for that, yeah.
The Calypsy might have already, or be working on it, so who knows, some version of that, because it does make sense that people are like, how would I know what's at Home Depot and what's going to invade, so.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. Either maybe get text or other references, or we link or whatever. So,
Okay.
So what's your take on an ordinance, do you think? It
mean,
sounds like we've got a lot of work to do.
I think an ordinance will be great. I think you need to get all this stuff done first, and I think the ordinance is it's a logical step. The ordinance comes after you've got all your ducks in a row. You've started your public education. Having done a lot of stuff with the Park Service, it's better to be ready for kickback, even if it never comes. So it's just how you do things, and so that if there's any pushback, you're ready. You already have your supporters. You already know what you're talking about. You already are sort of moving in the right direction. I think it's hard to start with an ordinance because then you have to justify it. You haven't done that yet.
Will you let us know if the California Invasive Plants Council or the Native Plant Society decide to try again in Sacramento?
I will be talking to Jake in about 2 weeks, so I will ask him that.
That'd be cool.
Do a
Thanks.
meeting with him, so.
Okay. Do we want to talk? Do you have time to stay and talk about the tree list at all?
Sure.
Natalie, do you have another copy of the tree list? Oh, good. Do you want me to bring Joe up to date on what we're talking about with the trees?
Fine with me.
Okay. So, as you know, we have a lot of dying Monterey pine trees in Brisbane and in Crocker Industrial Park. And so we were putting together a plan to maybe help the businesses remove the dead and dying trees. I mean, they would have to pay for it, but we would sort of help them with that. And we're getting quotes from various contractors that can actually handle that kind of work. Of course, Davy Tree's the big one. And one of the things that our ordinance requires is that when they remove one of those trees, they have to plant a new tree.
Yeah.
But we're trying to be more sensitive about what trees we're planting. And I think none of us are, I don't know if any of us are particularly happy with our current approved street tree list. And we've had a lot of discussion about it in the past. And then as we move forward, we're looking for trees that we can't always plant natives. But we also want, when we plant commercial trees, we want to try to plant things that are not going to be a problem going forward. Are not going to make worse problem than the problem we had, and are not going to be, that it's going to be the right tree for the right place.
Yeah.
And also considering climate change, that these trees will have a 50 to 100 year lifespan, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, the trees that are dying now in the industrial park, many of them have been there for over 50 years now. The Monterey pines, I remember when they were planted. And
So, Joe, would you like to look over this list and just tell us if you have any?
I mean, my
Feelings
challenge is,
about any
again,
of
I'm an ecologist and my background's in native plants. So a lot of these, I recognize the trees. I don't know their sort of personality or any of the issues. I would say check in with Friends of the Urban Forest.
Okay.
Because there's lots of stuff with roots and sidewalks. There's lots of stuff with weird sticky stuff that gets on people's cars. There's a
Yeah.
whole long list of things you want to deal with street trees.
Yeah, I think a lot of these have already been run through that particular filter.
Okay.
So
We showed this to Friends of the Urban Forest.
I believe so.
I don't think so.
I was in that. We talked about this. Okay, fine.
And there's also
Missed it, but-
there's certain pines that don't get pitch pine
Yeah.
kicker.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's also been vetted through this. Okay.
Yeah.
I think, Stuart, how old is this approved tree list? Like, when was it put together?
I don't know. I mean, I could ask Randy because Randy and his staff goes through it.
And on native trees, I mean, we would many times would rather plant a native tree if we could. Many of them are somewhat slow growing. Some of them are, some of them aren't.
Many trees are pretty slow growing, to be honest.
But do you have ones that, I mean, which?
The California Bay is a nice evergreen that would be in there. I mean, the Buckeye produces big buckeyes that people don't like bouncing on their cars. So that is ready in Brisbane, as you know. Oaks are slow growers, but again, so are a lot of these other trees. The other thing is I can see here in the list a couple trees I recognize as being smaller, and there's a lot of bushes that we have like toyon and others that actually can be turned into trees. And in fact, a lot of I've seen a number of trees like acacias. If you go to their wild habitat in Australia, they're actually like big bushes. And we've turned them into trees by pruning. It's probably true for a number of these trees as well. So I think it's also looking at some of our, a lot of people don't want a big tree, they want a medium to small tree. And so, again, some of the larger bushes, native bushes, can just be turned into trees by trimming them
So
up.
Toyon would be one example of that. Can you think of any
Wax
other?
myrtle,
Wax myrtle.
a royal willow, that's very fast growing. Hollyleaf cherry. There's a number of sort of big bushes. Blue elderberry. That's a deciduous tree. So there's again, it's moving again depending on the size, because a lot of people like their views. They don't want to see a big tree in front of their house. Small trees actually also are on a lot of people's interest list.
Can I ask a quick question? No, we're talking about the trees that would be replaced in Valley Drive. Don't we want taller trees there? I mean, we're trying to
I
get a
think we
canopy
do.
going that's supposed to cool down the area as well.
Yeah.
Well, at the
We
same
need bigger trees with bigger canopies.
at the same time, we don't want trees that are too large there, because I mean, like right now, the trees that are there are much larger than what was originally designed. They grew bigger than the concept. But the other thing is it is still, you know, the industrial park is hard because it's in the middle, surrounded by, you know, native habitat. And at one point during the testimony on the Calliope was that it was supposed to be able to fly across the industrial park from one side over to Clippy Hill on the other side. And trees, large trees, can be an impediment to flight for the butterflies. I don't know about for other insects and stuff like that.
Even if you don't have a solid wall of them?
Yeah.
Really?
You're still going to need something that's going to grow at least 20 feet, a canopy that's going to be at least 20 feet to go over the top of the buildings.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, because most of the buildings are
definitely a range there, but
15 to
turning
20.
a bush into a tree is not going to get more than about 10, 15, 20 feet at the very most.
Yeah, I guess it depends what ones.
Yeah, so there's a long list. I was just suggesting for more in the neighborhood. So,
Uh-huh.
and again, the goal is just to make sure they're not invasive. I see the Brazilian pepper tree that is invasive in our riparian habitat, so that would be a good one to get rid of.
Wait,
Here?
that's
It's invasive here?
Yeah, it's also on the approved list.
Really? Because it's just a plague in Florida. That's one of the trees that they've
It's also
outlawed.
in California on riparian habitats. It's showing up in riparian habitats garden.
okay. Anything else on this list that's bad news?
The rest of them, I don't know, to be honest.
Okay.
I don't recognize them.
Okay.
So.
But Friends of the Urban Forest would be able to give us some recent guidance on this?
I'm
Maybe?
guessing, just because they do, again, you're asking for experts, and they've been doing this a long time.
Okay.
One other
Yeah, I remember talking about this before, and I brought their brochure to a meeting. Do I even still
Yeah,
have it?
we did talk about it when Sean was on the committee.
Yeah.
But
and
did
I
we
thought-
ever consult with them about it?
I
don't
thought
think
so.
we
Steph
did.
was going to do
consulted
that,
with
but I
Friends of the
don't.
Urban Forest. I don't think we talked to
That
them.
would have been pre-Natalie, so.
And in interest of sort of adding back the natives, I'll use an example. Sydney, Australia, I guess it would have been 30 years ago now, made a decision to start putting in native trees back into their city. And they did the study on birds, and the number of native birds that came back into the city was significant. And again, if you travel around Sydney, you'll see a lot of native birds in the parks and around the city. And just as an example, so again, it's important to sort of, even if you just put the natives at the beginning and say, and there's a list of native trees, and if you ask Audubon, there's actually a list of non-native trees that really support birds. That might be, the next list. And you can leave the other ones that are non-invasive, but maybe just encourage them, like say, if you'd like to plant a native tree to support, the native habitat, or support birds, these trees. It just makes it a more interesting list than sort of a long list of trees that people may or may not know anything about.
De-emphasize the ones with the least benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we growing very many trees at the nursery?
We have a bunch of them in little pots, mainly because people generally don't buy them. So that's been the problem. But we have a bunch of little guys, and we have tree pots. We just have never planted them up because we don't sell that many.
Okay.
One last question. Do you know if Melaleuca is invasive here?
I don't believe it is.
Because it's bad news in some places.
Yeah, I know in Florida it's really nice.
Okay.
All right.
Joe,
Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe Cannon.
Thank you.
If you think of anything else, I'm sure you can send us, Natalie, an email, and we'd love to hear if you have any further thoughts. I want to say thank you on behalf of the committee, and you'll be hearing from us again, I'm sure, also.
Well, I want to thank you for working on this because it helps us up on the mountain. So.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll see you on Saturday. I know I will.
Yes, I will see you Saturday.
Yeah, I was working at the nursery this morning, getting everything ready.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.
So let us, if we can then move on. Does anybody have any last words about the invasive species brochure, or shall we move on to the polystyrene ban letter?
Oh, we
Just
forgot
thanks
the Quarry
again
Road
to
cleanup
Joe,
day.
because I'm really thinking about the whole brochure a lot differently now.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Joe, we forgot the Quarry Road cleanup day that we moved up
Oh.
in the agenda too.
Oh,
Are there things that we can do at the base of Al Canyon, or should we just focus on Quarry Road and the garbage?
I mean, the base of Al Canyon's pretty invaded by many species. I would say,
Including skateboarders.
yeah, but I would say at this point, the garbage actually is probably the higher priority because
Yeah.
some garbage makes people feel more comfortable throwing more garbage, and it just sort of creates a cycle. The weeds are there, but again, effective weeding is at the edge, and at the bottom, there's just kind of lots of weeds. So I think you'd just be trying to hold the ocean back with a broom down there. So I would just say I think it feels better and it looks a lot better because there is a lot of trash down there to get the trash out of there.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay.
Now, shall we go on to the polystyrene ban?
Yes.
Great. I'm looking forward to moving this meeting along as it is 7:40, and we are halfway through our time and much less than halfway through our list. So, let us officially get cracking. All right? So I believe Natalie printed us out a new copy, taking into account our edits. I am perfectly happy with it at this point, but I'd like to hear what the other committee members have to say.
I think it's a good letter. The only thing it needs is the date of the meeting. Do we have potential times for it?
So I think we needed to collaborate with you to see who was available, or also decide on a time and a day.
I actually had a little something I wanted to present and find out what you guys felt about adding that into the letter. But I have a patient, and the patient always talks about off-gassing. And I couldn't get that out of my head, so of course I had to look and see what they were saying about it. And the United States government has actually studied it. And when you take styrofoam and you take hot Chinese food and you pour it into the styrofoam container, you actually denature the styrofoam, creating a lot of chemicals that go into the food that you're going to eat. This was actually studied by the United States government on July 10th of 2011, and they added styrene to the list of known carcinogens. So that would be something that I would think might be nice to add in. And then, of course, the website I had to take down the quote. It said, "Yummy tumors to go."
Yes. Could we add a bit about it being carcinogen, and then do you think you could give us that website information and that we could maybe use that as part of our
I
presentation?
didn't write it down. I just Googled it.
Okay.
I guess I should have probably written it down and sent links, but
Yeah,
It
anytime
works
you
really
come
well.
across anything like that, just go ahead and forward it to Natalie, and that way we will have it if it then becomes relevant.
I'll look at it when I get back in the office tomorrow.
Thank you.
No problem.
Great addition.
Yeah, I think so too. But one thing that I also think is the letter probably should be a little bit shorter, especially the first paragraph.
Yeah.
It's way too long. I don't think we need to list the neighboring cities. Who cares? It's Brisbane. And
I personally
disagree.
disagree.
Yeah, no. I
really,
think
even
that-
though we
Yeah.
see several neighboring cities.
Well, including, and then name a couple.
Yeah, I mean, naming, especially the ones closest to us, and it seemed like the garbage patch paragraph might be just a little too long. You know, But I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm assuming everybody knows what the garbage patch is, but maybe everybody doesn't know.
So maybe if we just change the first paragraph, adopted by the city and county of San Mateo and cities, blah, 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 and just take out a few words there to make it a little more concise.
I think it should be 2 paragraphs instead of 1 also. I mean, I hate to write letters by committee, but I think we'll lose them in the first paragraph. It's so long.
If you
can't
all would
write.
like, I would volunteer to edit this letter.
Okay.
That would be good.
All right.
Yeah.
So Natalie, could you send me an electronic version, and I'll use track changes, and then I'll send it back to you, and I guess you can maybe email it to everybody else.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to do that.
she sent an electronic version in our packet,
Oh, okay.
so you already have it.
All right. So I'll have a go at it, and then I guess then you can figure out what you want to do with the edits.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do we have the questionnaire?
can you send me the?
Yeah, last page.
Yeah, just give me your email. And
Sure.
put it on there.
So the questionnaire, are we going to add little yes/no things to it, or?
Thank you.
We can.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
what?
I was wondering if we were going to add little less yes/no things, like boxes or the questionnaire on the back.
Oh.
It's a pretty
Well,
short questionnaire.
Well, the thing is, the last one is not a check or not check. It's more of a,
Well,
something.
we'll just add some lines.
Yeah.
Most people don't like scribbling on blank
I'm
base.
one of those people.
Also,
Maybe
agree-
maybe
I also agree with you. This whole section about the garbage patch. I mean, that's not that as relevant. I mean, it is relevant because it does take so long to break down. But that's a whole section that could be addressed during a meeting as opposed to put into a letter saying, "Hey, we're having a meeting."
Yeah.
Should
we
be
could
really
mention
short
it,
and
but
sweet.
really abbreviate it.
Yeah, it needs to be
Okay.
really
Yeah, like-
sweet.
I think
Tying in, the toxic to the body with the cancer and toxic to the planet with the garbage patch, and just kind of leave it at that without getting into explanations of each one.
Yeah. And also, it being a greener, healthier city, because it's always like when people read a letter, they're like, what's in it for me? And the what's in it for me is
I'll
You know,
shoot
using styrofoam like that's really not safe.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're poisoning yourself.
All right, so where we're at,
Natalie,
this
do you know how to
Glenn
do
is
that?
going to make a few edits. It's going to go back to Natalie. We need to decide on a meeting time so that that can be included in the letter. Can we possibly make progress on that today?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
May I suggest one addition to the back? I think we should ask them, do you feel a ban on styrene will represent a significant hardship to your business? Or costs of over, I don't know, what amount? $100 a
I
year?
can't imagine it would because they're just going to pass on any additional cost to the customer.
Yeah.
So I mean, the real hardship would be reprinting menus.
Why would you have to reprint menus?
Why
Could
would you need
change
to
it
do that?
Well, if they'll say the styrofoam cost 10 cents for a clamshell and you're going to change it to a biodegradable form of paper, and that costs 50 cents for a clamshell, that's going to be a significant cost to them. They pass that on to the customer. They're going to have to raise the cost of their food item. In order to cover
One of the restaurants that I go to just charges you a fee for takeout, like
that might be an
85
option.
cents.
Yeah, I've been to places like that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Or even for to-go containers after you've eaten there. They charge you 85 cents for the leftovers.
I don't know. It just seems like maybe we should ask them, if since this meeting is about hardships, we should ask them.
Yeah.
I
Represent
I
significant
agree
think that's a
hardship.
great idea, actually.
And if so, how much? I mean,
Yeah.
cost estimate or something.
So, Michael, does that address your concerns
what is that?
with the financial hardships for the container?
Yeah, I don't mind having that put on there. To
Okay.
me, it seems like it opens a window that they could say, oh, it's going to be a hardship, and they don't have to abide by it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, I don't know.
Well, I would guess we'll just have to see how that comes out.
So you don't think we should include a question like that because you think it opens the door for them to complain? That's what I'm hearing. I don't know. What do y'all think?
I don't think we should open the door for them to complain because we're
Right.
going to pass this damn thing.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I mean,
Yeah.
I think we want to give them. I think the reality is we're going to pass it one way or another, and if not now, then later, because it's just the trend in the way things are going. And I think that asking how much it'll hurt makes it sound like we care. I mean, and to a certain extent, that's part of the process. Is you want to engage with people, make them feel heard. That's not going to change the fact that 10 years from now, you won't even be able to buy styrofoam anywhere except Arkansas or whatever.
Poor Arkansas.
Texas.
Yeah. So I personally didn't feel like it was much of a question when we were passing the bag ordinance because the representative from the county specifically said that they were looking for uniformity in legislature. I don't feel we've had that message here, although I think it would be a good thing. So I think Kima's point is valid that this is coming whether they like it or not. But it's nice to ask.
How about this?
Mm-hmm.
We could say, do you anticipate that the a prohibition on styrofoam or a styrofoam ban will cost your business more than $250 a year or something?
No, I mean the thing is $250. It could make a bigger chunk for a small business as opposed to one that does a lot of revenue every month.
That's
So I don't. I mean, it would. I think if you were going to ask a question like that, you would couch it more in terms of percentage of revenue, or percentage of gross, revenue or whatever. But again, I mean, you're talking probably what would amount to a fraction of a percent.
right.
When food costs, if you consider the cost of the food that goes into the container on a takeout, and the cost of the container, you're talking. When it changes a little bit, you're talking a very minor percent, especially when they factor in all their other fixed costs like rent and labor and all that.
Restaurants are mostly overhead.
Yeah.
Well, what's it going to really cost when people start noticing or coming to the realization, like I did today? I'm not going to order at XYZ restaurants, which will remain unnamed at the moment, but I'm not going to order there.
Yeah.
They just lost business because I'm not going to go there for dinner tomorrow.
I'm not going to get takeout.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely already do that.
Yeah.
I went to a different restaurant in town here, and they sent it was a to-go order, and it was all in plastic, and it wasn't styrofoam. So some of the restaurants have already made the change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Kima's right, though. I think it's important to show that we care. I mean, that's why the council asked us to
I would even say not just to show to say that we care, but we should actually care.
to show it. Yeah. And the council was pretty insistent that we find out.
I wouldn't put
business.
a dollar amount on it. I would just say, I would ask.
Is it gonna? Yeah, it's saying is this gonna be a material or substantial hardship to you? And people will define that in different ways. But when you get down, then that's when you can ask them.
What's the hardship?
Right,
How
like
can
you're
we
you're
mitigate?
spending, exactly. Then we can see how many people we should ask when they come to the meeting.
Well, when they come to the meeting, if there's going to be a financial hardship, we're going to hear about it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's
yeah.
So let's go ahead and include the question.
But with no dollar amount.
Yeah. Do we need to make a motion for that, or are you just
No.
going to do that, Glenn?
Yeah,
Okay,
let's do it.
Great. And then getting back to the issue of the meeting, scheduling the meeting. What do we need to work around? What do we need to? How far out are we looking? I don't even know.
Do we all need to be here, or how does that work?
It's up to you on how you want to do it. I mean, my suggestion is that you would probably want a subcommittee to work on what the presentation for that day is going to be, because I think part of it is going to be having the business owners talk about it, but also I think the the Open Space and Ecology Committee probably should have a presentation and maybe include things like the information on the garbage patch and the health issues and all that, and then also provide samples of alternative packaging and maybe lists of where you can get the alternative packaging, and
Which
what their
we-
cost is, which we've done.
Yeah.
But that's an old list, and it's probably, if you update it, the costs are probably different now as well.
It's
Probably
not that
cheaper.
old. It's like a year old.
Right. So, I mean, I'm sure there's new things that you can look at. I'm just looking online. There's a place in Burlingame that's, does packaging now. And so you can get maybe more local stuff. And I think that might be the other issue is if we can find local suppliers.
Okay.
We can ask Buy Right if they do supply, if they supply for it. And maybe if Buy Right does, maybe get ask Buy Right what kind of information they have on it.
Okay.
So I think that you should have a subcommittee to figure out what exactly, how you're going to want to make that presentation, and my guess is if you put it out a month,
From the date you send the letter.
yeah,
But I don't think we need to wait for the next meeting to send the letter.
no,
I'm just not sure if anybody's going to actually come. I will actually be quite surprised if we have a
Right.
hall full of.
you might get 2, 3. I mean, there's not that many businesses in town that
Yeah.
does this, but you also, then what you would be able to do is for the council meeting when you present it, is you'd have that presentation available for the council meeting to present to the council and show
Oh.
that you've done that research as well as, and if you've offered it to the vendors, and also if you have a list of other, what you might do is if you do it in a PowerPoint presentation, follow up the letter saying, we missed you at the meeting, here's what we presented.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm
do
sold.
something like that, so that way you hit them twice, and then you have something available for the council.
That's a good idea.
So, I guess in that case, we need to form a subcommittee. Work on this issue.
I mean, it could, and I think the subcommittee could do it in one meeting, spend an hour as to what you want to do, and Natalie can go do the research for you.
Not all of it. Michael, would you be interested in being on the subcommittee?
I haven't the slightest idea what that entails, but sure, why not?
Great. We now have a subcommittee of one. Would anybody else like to join the subcommittee?
Wow. So Natalie and Mike
Sure.
will get together and figure out what you're going to present.
I have no idea how to do a PowerPoint, just so you know.
That's what she's here for.
Don't even know what that
I'm currently not volunteering for more stuff.
Yeah.
Because I am like up to here.
Volunteering with wedding planning.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
All right. Can we have a subcommittee of one?
Sure.
All right.
You can't just
But we need to,
up to 3.
but we do need to set the date
Yep.
of, so that we can put it in the letter.
Yep.
And would it be, should we say should we have it at one of our meetings so that we don't all show up and then nothing happens? Should we say the date of our July meeting?
I don't think we should have it at our meeting time. I think we should have it during business hours for the convenience of people who might like to come.
How about 1 hour prior to our meeting at 5:30, or do you think it should
Well,
be the middle
you're
of the day?
hitting dinner hour. So, I mean, if you do something like at 3, so you're hitting before dinner and before dinner, after lunch.
Okay.
So that limits it to Tuesdays and Thursdays for me.
That's all right.
Can we do 4? I just feel like we might get more people if we're not cutting into the middle of their business
Yeah,
day.
that could be 4.
So 4, Tuesday or Thursday, would that work for you?
Mhm.
Okay. And then we just need to set the date. Unfortunately, I don't have a calendar in front of me. Does anybody have a calendar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Forgot one.
Yes, we do have a calendar type device.
If I'm around the day of the meeting, I might volunteer to come and sit with you. And
So when do you go away? When do you go away?
well, I don't want to broadcast it to the whole city, but
No,
Well-
that's not an appropriate question.
But you can tell Stuart later.
So let's
or we could take a short break.
Um,
Really like.
do you want to shoot?
Where the hell's my calendar?
If you do it on June 22nd or June 29th, so the next council meeting after that, the city council is looking at moving their council meetings to Thursdays, and I think I don't know if they're going to be able to meet on the 5th because that's right after the 4th. So, but the 19th would be their council meeting. So if you shoot for trying to get it onto the 19th council meeting. So if you do something like June 22nd or June 29th as dates.
I won't be here then.
No, I'm talking June. Oh, sorry. I'm in the wrong month. I'm being told. June 19th, June 26th, because July 3rd is the first meeting in July, and that's the day before July 4th, so they're not going to meet there. So they'll probably meet July 17th. So if you do like June 19th or June 26th, you'd hit the June 17th meeting. And maybe as late as July 8th.
We're going to talk to council first and then?
No, what I thought you were going to do is meet with the business owners and then present to council.
Okay.
So what I was shooting for is to see if you can get on the July 17th meeting for council.
Oh, I see, understand.
So if you can maybe do,
July 17th meeting?
Yes.
Oh, for council, okay.
right, if you want to do it that quick. But, you know, and I thought you did. So you have June 19th, which is a Thursday. June 24th is a Tuesday. June 26th is a Thursday. Or July 1st. And possibly July 8th.
I think the end of June would probably be best. That gives us plenty enough time. But we also have to get the second letter out too. Get the first letter out. We get the second letter out after we've had our meeting, before we go to council.
Right, so if you do June 26th,
It's going to have to be closer to June 19th or 17th, because that would give time to have the meeting, hear what their concerns are, make revisions, send the second letter out, and then present to the council in July sometime.
Okay.
I think the council, are they going to be on vacation in July?
well, I'm assuming they're not going to meet July 3rd. But
No, I thought,
I
aren't they
can't
taking a whole month off or something?
that's unusual for them.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they usually take one meeting off a month, so that way if there's anything that they need to meet on.
Okay.
I mean, that's just, normal. I don't know what they're doing, until they decide, I don't know.
Okay.
The challenge with meeting June 19th is we're already on May 14th, and if, we're going to get the letter back from Glenn next week, probably, get it mailed
Around quick.
mailed out, that gives them less than a month
Right.
to come to the meeting. But I don't know if they need that much warning.
I don't
Yeah,
give them too much warning.
they'll forget.
Yeah.
Right, so, I mean, we can shoot, if you want to shoot for June 19th, you might also just want to get the letter out to them the week of June 2nd.
Now, you didn't say there's a council meeting on the 19th, did you?
No.
Okay.
I
Well,
think
there
that's
will be, but
gonna-
that'll be in the evening.
Yeah, but if it gets too close together, then it might bleed over.
No, because the
Disruptive.
council meeting won't be until 7:30.
Okay.
So if you guys go from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, that means
have
it's
a
way
problem.
more interesting than I would have thought.
Okay.
All right.
So tentatively, we have it scheduled for June 19th at 4 p.m. Michael, if you will follow up with Natalie once you've had a chance to check your personal schedule and confirm that you are, in fact, available and comfortable with that time. I think I'd rather leave that as a subcommittee matter and move on to the next agenda item, the fossil fuels divestment letter to CalPERS and following resolution. Is everybody good with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Good job, Glenn.
Yep.
Well, these guys wrote the letter. I didn't.
Just overall, good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have happened without you. And the next thing is just reminding everybody that June 21st is our Quarry Road Cleanup Day, and full participation would be great.
Okay,
Hold on.
so
I'm not sure
yeah,
we're done
Oh,
yet.
I
we're
thought
still
we
on
were.
6. Has everybody had a chance to read the letter, and are there any comments on the letter?
Yes, I just wonder, the council voted unanimously to send this letter, and it might be good to mention that. That the council voted at its meeting to indicate this was a pretty formal decision that the council made. I think that would add to the weight of the letter. Basically, I think it's a good letter. The only other thing I wonder about is whether we should mention, that Brisbane has done a lot to try to, reduce its carbon footprint, and that this is a city that's really tried hard, and so we're feeling kind of blocked by the bigger picture. There was a line in here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, all communities must take action. We could say Brisbane has tried to take action itself, but without the bigger action, cities are limited in what they can do.
Now, was this letter specifically voted on or approved by the council? Because if it
No.
was approved, okay.
So
No.
what the
All right.
council requested was that you would bring back the resolution for them to vote on.
Okay.
as- So that way, I think what we'll do is bring the resolution. If you're happy with the resolution, we'd bring
Wait.
that back to the city council for their vote.
I think Glenn wants to make some changes.
Well, wait a minute. I haven't seen a resolution. Are we doing a
It's
resolution?
on the back of the letter.
Oh, excellent.
So what
Sorry
council
about
asked
that.
for was the resolution. So that way, they would vote on the resolution. We would attach the resolution to the letter. So that
Oh,
way
got
they
it.
would see that it was a 5-0 vote, and what the
Okay.
resolution was.
So
That's fine then. Then I think the letter is fine.
okay. So does anybody have any further input on this, the letter and resolution?
Looks
No.
good.
Yeah,
We're all happy?
looks good.
All right, then Natalie, please send it on to council. Thank you.
Great.
So now we've already done 7, so I believe we're on to 8. Recap on Habitat Restoration Day at Costaños Canyon.
It was excellent. We got a lot done. I didn't get poison oak, and the T-shirts were really cute, and lunch was good. Okay, that's it. Next item.
Michelle,
Yeah,
did you take pictures?
I did take a couple of pictures at the beginning, yeah, and then after that, I didn't want to touch my camera again.
Can you email me some?
Yeah, let me make the note. You know what? Just harass me a little bit. I don't know that I've even taken them off the camera yet. Okay.
Thank you.
So does it look like Costaños Canyon is really cleared out and we might be able to move on next year, or?
I didn't go up to the top of the canyon, but I will tell you this. When I walked into Costañas Canyon that day, I was just like, oh, this is such a magical place. And you could really see the fruits of our efforts in the flesh, because the lower part of the canyon just looked beautiful. There were native plants growing. We went back and did, ivy cleanup quite a ways, make sure there's no little stragglers. And you could really tell that we had made a huge difference. We didn't have nearly as many people this year, which was a disappointment. I think it's because, Easter was late and timing wasn't great. But the people that did come were very hardworking, enthusiastic, and they were happy to be there again. So, so I don't know. I haven't been up to the top of the canyon. I did not. I focused my efforts on the bottom of the canyon where it was closer.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much, Michelle. So item number 9, carbon calculator and community education. That's my item, so I'll give a little. I was hoping to actually have a physical presentation together for everybody, but gee whiz, I got busy. So I have engineered out what I think this needs to be in terms of a physical item, and I have gotten the permission to use the data from Berkeley, and I have gotten said data from Berkeley, and I have started working through said data from Berkeley. And I think I would like to continue on doing that by myself so that it remains consistent, because it's kind of a bear. And there's a lot of interdependencies in those calculations. And so just for but then I think when it comes to actually building the calculator, I would like to maybe schedule a couple of weekend work days with this committee. And we can all glue and nail and paint and letter and whatever else ends up needing to happen. But I don't think I'm in a position to schedule that at the moment. My guess will be August. So can we please calendar that for the July meeting? So that maybe we can schedule a work day for August, and then present it in October at the community festival.
That would be good.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I just know my summer, I was telling Glenn on the way over here, my summer is double booked with work. So I don't even want to get too far on this until August. Does anybody have any specific questions they want to ask me, or input they want to make on my overarching conceptual plan of how this is all going to magically happen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Do we want to take a 3-minute break?
Okay, if people would like to take a 3-minute break, let us have a 3-minute break.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
volunteer to assemble the photographs and write the language so that it can go in the newsletter.
I'm sorry, I don't know which project this is.
You missed the conversation.
Oh, okay. So we were I was just asking, so what did we decide about linking the invasive plant issue to the website? And Stuart suggested that we feature an invasive and an alternative every month in the Brisbane newsletter.
That's what I was going to
But
suggest.
somebody needs to
Yes.
somebody needs to do the work.
I will do that as long as Natalie promises to A, remind me, and B, make my deadlines clear for me well in advance.
I can help with it too. You know,
Yep.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay? Because if I just need somebody, I can do the labor, but I need it to not be another administrative issue in my life because I frankly am drowning in administrative issues in my life. But enough personal talk. Okay. Number 10, are we ready for that? TV panels and parking lots. Okay. This came up last time. This was one of my darlings. And Natalie found some information here, which is from San Francisco. And I brought some papers with some personal notes on it. But I'd like to start off with you, Kima. Do you have anything you'd like to address, speak to, verbal about?
No, I mean, specifically about parking lots and PVs?
The information that Natalie brought was about parking lots and trees. But I think it could be made relevant.
Yeah, no, I don't have any comments.
Michelle?
Yeah. I park every day in an outdoor parking lot, and they planted the stupidest trees. I mean, I love trees, and I try to plant in the shady area and stuff like that. But when they redid the parking lot, they planted trees that are spewers, and they just shit all over the cars. It's awful. And so, but I love trees, and I'm kind of like really torn. So, I think we really need to be careful about what kind of trees we would plant in parking lots. And I do think the photovoltaics are good to have over parking lots, over outdoor parking lots. I really think that we should do every effort we can to get all of the roofs in the industrial park with PV on them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I think, would be a much more actionable thing than trying to get PV over the parking lots.
So, Michelle, could I ask you to see if you can find out what kinds of trees those are in your parking lot?
Oh, I know what they are.
They are? And are they on the list of our approved street trees? 'Cause those that might come into play on our street trees.
One of them is the Fissifolia. It's and I think one of them might be the Melaleuca linearifolia, but I'll look for sure and try and find out.
Okay.
They're all, Australian natives that just put out the little red things all over, sticky, yucky,
Bottle brush?
like bottle brush type trees.
Okay.
But there's many Australian natives that put out those kind of red colored little stamens on
Okay.
the plants besides bottle brush.
Okay. So if you could find that, that would help us follow up not only on our green parking lots, but also on our approved street tree list.
Yeah, but this is just one of many trees that, let's plant buckeyes.
Yeah. No.
If you
Kinda
plant
seems
buckeyes,
like
it'll
these-
eliminate the number of cars in the parking lots. They
Yeah.
want to walk. Sorry.
Stuart, it seems kind of like this approved street tree list needs to be updated.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it is, it's we would work with the Public Works Department for the street tree list, and then probably Public Works and Parks and Recreation if you want to look at, the trees in parks as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you would like, we can, for the street tree list, maybe invite either Randy or Karen to a meeting to talk about street trees as to why those trees are on the list and what the suggestions would be to change some of those trees.
We should invite Sean Sweeney to that meeting as
Yeah.
well.
We need to have a whole spreadsheet that has a long list of trees and which ones are native and which ones are beneficial for this reason or that reason, which ones are appropriate for landscape planting, which ones are appropriate for parking lot planting, which ones are appropriate for street planting. We need to really integrate this whole set of data so that it's usable by all of the city departments, and that we have, a consistent, so we're not duplicating research through different different departments, and we can all act in a consistent and uniform manner that makes sense.
Right. That's why I think bringing Public Works into it, because
Great.
obviously they do the street trees.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot more information as well.
One other thing about the parking lot, as I'm looking at this, it talks about the permeable surfaces
Mm-hmm.
for the runoff and everything. And I really think that we should start working towards that as well.
I've talked to Mary about that several times, and apparently this city has a pretty long history of resisting requirements for permeable surfaces, because I have asked about it, and they apparently don't care for it, and I'm not sure why that is, but
I think I can address that.
I think part of it is potential for landslides.
That's one of it.
Steep places. There are probably places in town where permeable surfaces shouldn't be used, but I'm not sure that means every place. And I would like to revisit the issue of permeable surfaces at some point.
Yeah, me too. And also, not even just permeable surfaces, but parking lots that drain into an area where the water can actually be absorbed into the ground and into the plants rather than it as runoff. Mm-hmm. Because right out here we have our own demonstration bioswale, and that's nice, but then we didn't do anything with that anywhere else in the city. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of areas where we have large expanses of parking lot where having a bioswale at the lower end of a parking lot would really be advantageous, so that water's not going through the storm drains and into the bay. And I know that this was more talk about photovoltaics, but if we're talking about what we're going to do for the future parking lots, it's completely different conversation, especially on areas that is not landfill.
I think another reason we want to talk about it is that quite a few people in Brisbane are doing what people in the Sunset in San Francisco are doing, and that's just surrounding their lots with concrete. And that seems to be, I've noticed several places where people have all concrete yards, and I'm not really sure why that's even being approved, but certainly if it is being approved, then it ought to be permeable surfaces, because that just generates a lot of runoff. And it's hard to imagine right now, but we're supposed to have an El Nino year this year. We might be sorry. I mean, we might really see what a lot of runoff does. So I think we should have that conversation at some point.
I'm going to go ahead and let us be sidetracked here. Permeable surfaces are highly desirable in about 90% of the situations. Brisbane is one of those places where it is you run into that 10% exception a lot.
But only on certain places.
Because actually in a lot of places, and this is going to get into my personal opinion a little bit here, but the reason the city has resisted it is because I've talked to the city about it, is because of the landslide issue. We also have numerable residences in town that are constantly after the city for groundwater infiltration into their basements. And we just have so many springs and so much groundwater in Brisbane that I think if, in large portions of Brisbane, if we start demanding permeable surfaces, we might see an increase in the groundwater intrusion into people's foundations and dampness and mold issues. So as much as I love to toe the environmental line, I'm not sure that this is the best battle for Brisbane.
Yeah, one of the things that causes groundwater problems as well is heavily excavating for construction.
Yeah.
This disturbs the natural flow.
Oh, yeah.
Tremendously, and causes situations like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, how many places in Brisbane have sump pumps? A lot. A lot. So, and then, you know, we can't be doing that out in the Baylands.
Yeah,
Over
but
the
there's
land.
Crocker
Ugh.
Industrial Park.
Yeah, there are places. I will say there are places, but
Yeah.
they're few and far between in Brisbane just because of the hydrology here.
Okay.
So I would like to get back to green parking lots. I was looking at we have our information for Sierra Point that we all reviewed when we were reviewing the Sierra Point plan. But I don't believe there's anything for the rest of Brisbane. I do, and I don't think, I haven't actually run out the numbers, but I think our Sierra Point guidelines are not as aggressive as the San Francisco guidelines, which ask for 50% coverage. And I think that 50% coverage is just beautiful.
50% coverage of what?
Shade on the parking lot, the trees in 15 years. And I think if we could do something like that just says 50% coverage with either trees or PV, and leave it up to the planning department, the owners, and the landscape designers, they can do either one. But I think that covering up asphalt and reducing the heat island effect and turning that into space that is either carbon negative or generating electricity is going to be important moving forward, just to our green building ordinance. And I know we've got problems with the green building ordinance. Natalie, did you get any information about where we are on that?
So I called the county, and there's no ordinance for PV in parking lots.
No,
He was asking where we are on our green building ordinance.
Oh, in the green building ordinance.
Have we heard?
have we heard? Is the state moving forward?
No, I think we were waiting to hear back from the consultant on what the changes that the state put into effect on January 1st would be. So, yeah, to quickly recap, we debated a whole bunch of changes and whether they were stringent enough to do any good or whether the business community would adopt them, and they were rejecting them. And then the state went and approved regulations that were even tighter than the ones we were considering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
But we don't know what those are yet. And
yeah.
Or no, we don't know what the effect or sort of the consultant was supposed to wait 6 months to come back, and I think it's going to be 6 months in June.
Oh, okay.
Come back and give us some sort of judgment on what the practical effect of those laws will be on additional green building ordinances.
But my understanding was the state's green building ordinance has been put on hold, that they didn't actually put it into effect. Something happened.
This
Thought. Gosh,
is
maybe.
Title 24, I think, that we were waiting for, wasn't it?
I thought it went into effect January 1st. I mean,
It was
Yeah.
supposed to, and I think it didn't.
oh, okay. I might have missed that.
Okay. I guess we just need to figure out where that whole ball of wax is hung up.
As far as the codes were supposed to come out in January, but it's now been postponed until July.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That answers
Yeah.
the question.
That's what I thought. So, could you put an item for July to update us and or let us know
Barbara.
whether or not there's an update?
We are scheduled to, Kima and I are the Green Building Ordinance Subcommittee members from this committee, and we're scheduled to meet with the entire committee with a consultant after the state upgrades come out. So
Okay.
now that's been delayed. So I expect, if they're not being released till July, it'll probably be fall before we meet again.
Okay. I would just like to know in July if they did make their date or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I'd like to know. I'd like to keep abreast with this.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just a simple no, nothing's happened. Matter of fact, likely it'll be a simple no, nothing has happened. But so back to our green parking lots. I guess this was my idea, and I would like to see us perhaps put together some recommendation to, and would that go to planning or to council then?
I think probably, I will ask John to probably have somebody from his department work with us. And we would probably want to go to council for their approval. It would then go to planning after that.
Okay.
To figure out where in the codes it would, be properly placed. But let's check with John to see, who would be available, because it seems more of a planning issue.
Yeah. All right, does anybody else have anything they want to say about the green parking lots?
I'm losing my energy.
Okay, I'm trying to mash through this for you, Michelle. Okay, and you said you didn't do the thank you letters to previous
Number
members.
11, sorry.
But can
I
we?
do have the, yeah?
Okay, so number 12?
Yeah, I do have the update from the BB CAG. I'll be really quick. On the meeting of the 2/18, it was, there was a presentation by Vic Paul. He was the project manager from the State Water Resources Control Board. And, basically he just talked about the VOCs and heavy metals in OU1 and OU2 and bunker sea oil and a bunch of different things like that, which it was really interesting, but at the same time, it kind of emphasized the fact that there really isn't the kind of oversight that we'd like there to be.
There isn't the kind of what?
Oversight by
Oh.
these agencies that
Okay.
the BB CAG felt was required.
Okay.
But more importantly, Mary sent me a thing that I want to announce. The next BB CAG meeting is next Tuesday at 7 p.m. at the Brisbane Community Center. And it's a presentation by Dr. Alex Horn, a PhD, CED Professor Emeritus from UC Berkeley. And it's on constructed wetlands that treat waste, look great, and provide excellent wildlife habitat. He's an expert in constructed wetlands for treatments of contaminants. He has designed wetlands from 1 to 500 acres in California, Arizona, and some in China, including one that covers more than 10,000 acres.
Wow.
He's worked for half a century in the interface between biology, ecology, and engineering. His UK education includes what would now be the U.S. equivalent of a double major in chemistry and zoology with a master's in biochemistry. He worked on algae in lakes and oceans for his doctorate and spent 32 years in environmental engineering at Berkeley, giving him a thorough knowledge of conventional treatment systems. Dr. Horn has experience in many of the contaminants found in on the baylands, including the most heavy metals, copper, zinc, lead, and mercury, and others like selenium, as well as nutrients, ammonia, oil spills, MTBE, and pesticides. Dr. Horn's talk will include discussion of unit process natural treatment wetlands, a type of natural treatment process that is more efficient and uses less space than many other methods. It's not always a standalone method, but works in concert with other conventional waste treatment systems where the weakness of one technique is supported by the strength of another, etc. So this really is a thing. I'm not going to be able to attend next Tuesday, but this is something that really I wish we could film and put on our public access channel, and it's something that people should attend. The BB CAG meetings are so informative for the public, and yet they're not televised, and they are not, well attended because it's tough. But if the information should be recorded, and I don't know if there's any way we can get that recorded, Stuart. Do you know?
Not in our budget. We'd have to ask council.
Possibility to ask them by next week? Before next week? I mean, how much would it cost to have it recorded and then
I'd have to ask Caroline. I don't know because they don't meet here, right? They meet
at the community center?
so that
Right.
they would need to bring in the cameras and everything. So it would cost more than if we were just to do something here. I don't know. What day is this?
Next Tuesday,
What time?
7:00.
Well, the next council meeting's on the 20th, so that would be the next opportunity to ask. I'll ask Clay.
Okay. I just feel like there is so much information that is being revealed in the BBCAG meetings that the public doesn't really have access to, even though they're notified of the BBCAG meetings. And like the one that was in February, I mean, it was really interesting to find out, you know, all of the different risks that there are there.
Here's another question, since it sounds like it's going to be pretty tough to get the thing recorded, although I agree with Michelle that I've heard from Mary that this man is really good, and this would be, this is an actual potential remediation strategy that he's talking about, so I think people would be very interested in it. But if he has a PowerPoint, a set of slides or something, if we can't record it, would there be a way that we could make that available to people?
Yeah, I mean, we could if he has something that we can put on the website.
Okay. I mean, I don't know, but
I mean, neither.
he might have that. I imagine he's given lots of presentations, so maybe he'll bring one. I do know that Mary has really worked hard on getting this meeting together, and she would like to invite everybody to come.
I think it's really important to have things like that available for the public. Sorry about that.
Your phone is still doing something.
It's vibrating. Make it stop. I don't know how to make it more. Sorry. Technology's bad.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you very much, Michelle. Was that all that you wanted to
Yep.
tell us? Okay. So if you've never been to a BBCAG meeting before and you're never going to go to another one, try this one out.
Exactly. Okay.
Okay. So update on Brisbane Acres lot coverage. Would you like to handle this one, Natalie, or Michelle? Would you like to initiate this one?
Well, Natalie, do you want to just talk about what you have here?
So I spoke to planning, and they thought it might be useful to have the definition of lot coverage, which is this page. And the other page that doesn't have a lot of print on it is a kind of a draft of what the rewording might be.
Okay. So you're saying that under lot coverage, we would have to change the definition of lot coverage for the. Now, is this the definition for all of Brisbane, not just the acres, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I would like us to change the definition for lot coverage to include an interior courtyard with 4 walls, regardless of whether it has a roof or not, for the acres properties. One of the things that was in the minutes that we were going to do for this meeting that I'm not seeing here is that we were going to assess the size of all of the remaining lots
So I went
in the acres.
there. I did do that. There is a website that allows you to type in all the lot numbers, and on a map it shows you what you're looking at on a map. And anything that isn't developed wasn't having square footage on it. I could send you the website if you want to look at it for curiosity, but I was going down the list and typing in all the numbers, and I wasn't getting any square footage that didn't already have something built on it.
So it's not giving you the size of the lots.
It's showing me an outline, like a picture, but it's not giving me square footage.
Okay.
What about city records? Because we should only be talking about a half a dozen parcels.
No, there's way more than a half
Really?
a dozen.
That-
That was misinformation in the meetings. There is tons of acre parcels that are still very vulnerable.
Okay.
That are, it's way more than 6.
Right. I mean, there's a difference between upper
20.
acres and lower acres.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, so
20 or to 40, something like
yeah.
that.
because upper acres, the city's bought a number of them, and we've shown that map over and over again.
Yeah.
But there's also lower acres.
And there's all the acres over on Harold Road. and
Right. That's
all-
I think that's considered more lower acres than the upper acres, isn't it?
No, they're all Brisbane acres.
Right. But when the committee originally did their analysis of higher priority conservation and lower priority conservation, they split. I mean, if you look at the map, there's a line around what the city at that time considered higher priority conservation area.
That was because it was in this portion of
Right, because that was
Brisbane.
considered more the upper acres, which backs up against the mountain there. Whereas you have the lower acres, such as the Thomas thing was considered more in the lower acres. So I think there's more parcels when you talk about parcels within all of the acres, upper and lower, than when people just talk about upper acre parcels.
Right,
And I
but
think
this would
that's-
apply to all acres parcels.
Right, and I think that's why there's a difference in conversation about how many parcels are available as to what is considered acres.
If
I agree with you, Michelle. I'm agreeing, because I think
Okay.
people are saying, people are looking at what we consider the high conservation area in the upper acres and saying that's the acres, but there's lower acres as well.
yes, and they should
So-
be subject
Yeah.
to
So
this.
we're in agreement. I'm just trying
Okay.
to explain why I think people have that misconception.
And it is a misconception.
I think probably the best, again, I think the best way to do this is maybe to go through, work with the planning staff, maybe invite John or Ken to come to a meeting, talk about, how we go about this, bring this forward to the city council with a recommendation, and then it would work its way back through the planning commission and back to the council.
Okay,
I mean, that seems to, if this is the kind of language that you are looking to have, and that's what we were trying to talk about last time, is this the kind of language that you would like to have? Because I also thought there was a little bit of conversation last time about it not being fully enclosed, but being enclosed on 3 sides, because that also limits the ability for it to be more open space oriented.
right.
So what we're bringing back is language here. What we would then do is probably have Ken or John come and talk about what the process is for getting this changed. How it relates to other issues that they have to deal with from a planning perspective. And then you can make a recommendation to the city council, and the city council would then deal with it, and then ask the planning commission to do what they need to do with it.
How soon can that happen?
We could ask if they're available for the next meeting.
Okay, because I think we need to act on this as quickly as possible.
I'm fine with that. I'm good. I'm support that. Does anybody else have anything to say about the lot acres, Brisbane acres, and lot coverage issue?
I think it's a healthy exercise to go through. I mean, it certainly was. It wasn't the best outcome for the one, and if we can prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
I think we're all in support of moving forward with this issue. So,
And the way this is written is it's enclosed within 4 walls, not within 3. Because I think that was part of the conversation last time.
Well, definitely we want them enclosed within 4 walls to be, but also, you don't want to. I don't want to leave it subject to interpretation where it's enclosed by 3 3/4 walls,
Right,
Yeah.
they leave a gap where you can take a trash can out, and they call that not four walls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we really need to.
I was just thinking maybe we should have language like something more than 60% surrounded
Yeah.
Okay.
so that they can't do what Kima just said.
Yeah, I would
leave it
say it should
opening.
be no less than 75, because 75 would be three walls.
3 walls.
You know, like I wouldn't. 60 means that 2/3 of it has to be 2/3 surrounded, not you know what I mean.
Yeah, a third would have to be open then. Whatever number we choose is fine. I'm not particularly attached to any number, but maybe if we do it in that regard.
Okay.
And maybe we could have, it crafted like ironclad legally,
Well, there's-
not
yeah,
subject to interpretation. Like, how high is that? How high is 25 feet from where? But more solidly written so that it's really clear. What?
And I think that's where if you work with John and then, the attorney, that might get you to where you want to be before you're ready to go to council.
All right.
So we can invite John to the next meeting,
Okay.
or Ken, whichever one he thinks is better.
Okay, so update on pace.
What is PACE again?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I think everybody other than Glenn may not remember what PACE is.
So PACE is
Right?
property assessed clean energy, and basically it's a strategy to help people finance energy upgrades on their homes. And long story short, people were very excited about PACE initially because it was a way to help homeowners finance something that can be pretty expensive. Even a retrofit can cost quite a bit, and allow them. Basically, the way it works is that governmental entities sell bonds, and out of those bonds, the proceeds are lent to homeowners, and they pay back the money with their property taxes. Is how it works. And then, let's see, I believe this was, so everybody was all excited. Berkeley adopted a PACE plan for that city, and a couple other cities did. And then the chairperson of the Federal Home Finance, something or other, federal government, nixed it. And this was the regulatory decision. And so PACE financing was suspended, but apparently it's back. I got notified of a meeting, and I guess Natalie went to hear all about that. So cool.
It was just basically everything that you just said.
Sorry, Natalie.
Was explained at the meeting. And then after that, there were some people there, some finance people that kind of explained, our company can finance your needs for, commercial, because there's also PACE for commercial, or there's also PACE for residential.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
So is it on? I mean,
They're basically starting it. They do have for the California First website is up, and I did see that you can apply on their website.
it's called California First.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a statewide program?
It's .org. So yeah. It was a lot of information, but basically PACE is exactly what you said, that it's financing against someone's home after it's assessed.
Mhm.
And it's eligible for energy upgrades and water upgrades.
Okay.
And so some of these financing companies only do residential, they only do commercial.
Okay.
So I think California First is one of those that I think they do both.
Interestingly enough, going on California First's website, they are for commercial, industrial, and multifamily projects, which is why they're not doing single-family residential, so they're not going into conflict with the FHA loans.
Oh, okay.
Because I think I remember the conversation that was basically the reason why the federal government didn't want it, because they were not, FHA would not be in a first position only.
Right.
and therefore they were not willing to lend against a residential house that had a PACE loan against it. So what they've gone to, looking at California first, is they've gone to those things that do not need or do not qualify for FHA funding.
Oh, fabulous. So I'm actually really glad to hear that, because I was on the energy strategy subcommittee, and we were going crazy trying to figure out how to get, how to deal with commercial properties and multifamily properties. And it's still not, we still have a lot of problems getting hold of landlords, but at least there's a financing mechanism. So that's very exciting. Thank you.
Does anybody have any idea how to turn this into an actionable item for the committees?
I believe the council would like to see the energy strategy subcommittee reconstituted. Yeah. They've said as much.
Yeah.
And so, I think, I'll volunteer to be on that, but I've said I can't do anything until the end of the summer. So
okay. I'm on that too, so maybe we can
have a meeting.
Yeah, could you put down a something to ping us in August, Natalie, to remind Glenn and I that we need to get together as a subcommittee?
Probably with Natalie and or Stuart.
Yep. All right. In the meantime, Natalie, if you would send me an email next week, maybe I can get Allison Wilson to write up something in the Luminary and just start getting businesses to think about it. So are we resolved on item number 14 and ready to move on to 15?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Actually,
actually we did 15
Yeah.
to some extent. Maybe we need to talk about that more, huh?
I don't know if we even need to know this, but I know a couple of the trees that were on our original list, or Elena's original list, have been taken down because I saw them being removed. I think they were at 240 Valley Drive.
Oh.
So we have I don't know how many trees it was. I just went by on my way to work, but they were cutting them down. Mm-hmm. So
We're making progress.
Did we make progress, or did something?
Well, I don't know. It could be that somebody was going to do it anyway. But so there are a couple fewer.
Always take credit for it, though.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's 5 minutes to 9. I think that we should move on and
Maybe
save the other things for the next meeting and approve the minutes. And
Are you making a motion?
yeah, I am.
I'll second it.
I'll second it.
I don't think we should go past 9 o'clock.
Okay. We definitely aren't going to get through work plan review, but I feel like maybe we could get through Park and Recreation Commission decision on the rental agreement. That would bring us a few minutes past 9 with the approval of minutes.
What's that for the community festival?
No, I think that was the rental agreement for when they rent out the park and stuff.
It was about protecting the trees.
Yeah.
And I believe that they do you know what action they took? Or
So since it included all of the trees in the park, it seems like something they didn't want to move forward with. And so I think I emailed you, but then I guess, so do you want to try to revisit that with just the new trees?
no, I want to revisit it with all the trees. I guess I need to go to the Park and Rec Commission meeting and speak to them about that.
Okay. Well, it's good that we talked about that, because now we know we got to do something more.
Okay.
Okay.
So they didn't take our recommendation? They said, no, you're perfectly willing to allow people to molest the trees?
I think their reasoning was that it didn't seem like it didn't make it seem like a very friendly park where people could come and have their parties and things like that.
And nail piñatas into the trees and do all kinds of things like that destroyed the trees that were there. Okay. Think we need to go back to that one.
Were the trees? I thought they were destroyed by the water, overwatering from
The new trees the new trees that we just replanted, they would say, no piñatas, no climbing. What they're saying is for those trees that are mature, they would want to have those be more available.
The
And the-
trees that were destroyed were quite mature. They were actually, pretty much heritage trees, and on one of them, it wasn't the water that killed it.
What was it?
It was people, like, nailing into it and climbing on it, and breaking branches and everything else. And the tree took a lot of abuse. It was the one that was closest to. It was the first of the 4 eucalyptuses that got killed, and it was definitely by abuse.
Aren't eucalyptus invasive?
These ones were not invasive. They'd been there for like 50 or 60 years. They formed that. Those were the 4 tree wells that were in the park.
Now we have 4 less eucalyptus in our town, and I think that's a good thing.
In this case, I don't think it was a good thing.
Okay.
I mean, those trees provided a tremendous amount of shade, and they had been there for 50 or 60 years.
I mean, we have a in the high tech business, we have a saying called "we got to eat our own dog food," and if we want to go around telling people we got to remove eucalyptus because they're invasive, I'm not sure if people are going to shed too many tears for getting rid of eucalyptus, even if it's in the park. Just being a voice of contrarianism here, but
No, I understand.
you know.
I mean, there's a difference between a grove of invasive eucalyptus up on the mountain that's a fire hazard and 4,
Sure.
trees in the park.
Absolutely, I'm not
Yeah.
arguing that.
No, I know. And different people have different feelings about it, but like on San Mateo Lane, we eliminated the eucalyptus there, and now it is an ivy pit
Yes.
where
Yeah.
it's growing up the mountain, and I'm so ashamed of us for that. I can't believe that. That was bad.
Was it just because it was cut down without a plan?
Well, they had a plan, but they didn't follow up on the plan. I mean, nobody maintains it. That's the thing, is you have a plan and then you implement you do it, and then you don't have a future plan for maintaining it. So,
That's what I meant, a maintenance plan, a after chopping plan.
yeah, the after chopping
Post-chop
plan was they planted some trees and then they haven't maintained them.
And they died?
I don't know. I didn't go in the ivy to see if the trees were still there.
That's not that doesn't sound good.
It's not good. And now the ivy's running up onto the mountain
crap.
from that canyon.
Okay.
So,
All right. So let us go ahead and, so Michelle, are you going to take that on? Or are you going to go talk to Park and Recreation Commission?
yeah, I think I am.
Okay. So we have a way to move forward on that. We already said we're going to move number 17 to our next meeting. Approval of minutes. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I have one change.
Ah, yes. Exciting.
It's on the 3rd page, third side. First paragraph. I did not say that renters have to install the panels. Actually, this is about solar panels on commercial buildings. Renters can't install the panels. It's got to be the owner that does that. But since the owners are often absentee, that's a problem. Renters might like to install the panels because it would save them money, but they can't do it.
Actually, I realize I did not read this. I thought I had, but I must have been thinking of a different week. So,
Yeah, also on the Brisbane acres lot coverage, it's confusing of whether we're talking about overall the ordinances across the whole town versus the ordinances covering the acres lots.
how does everybody feel about maybe doing, can we, is it allowed to do approval of minutes via email?
Can we just
Yeah, we just bring it back next month.
Yeah,
Okay.
So if people have suggestions,
yeah.
changes, send them to Natalie, and we'll bring them back next month.
Since it's not being rubber stamped, I'd like to do that if somebody would make a motion.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, we are adjourned.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
So,
Good
so
job.
Natalie, I will try to get the letter to you by this weekend sometime. The one about the polystyrene ordinance.
See you, Mike.